Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen promotes her MLM at my wedding. After that, am I the jerk for using my daughter's college fund to keep our dream house? And after that, brother lied to his pregnant wife about owning my house. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to promote her MLM at anyone else's wedding. But my essential oils, Reddit boy! So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen promotes her MLM at my wedding. I, 29 female, married my wife in October last year. Best day of my life. My sister, who's 32, Bianca, has been in an MLM for almost 3 years. She has seriously become another person since she started her business. We share some group chats, but there's not a day that goes by that she doesn't send out catalogs, promotions, and walls of text about how lucrative the opportunity is. About the topic. It was the beginning of the wedding reception. My wife and I are talking to some of our guests when our wedding planner frantically approaches us and tells us that there's a guest handing out MLM business cards to arriving guests. Turned out it was Bianca. I asked her to stop, and she did, except she spent the whole night trying to talk people into the business. In the grand scheme of things, what Bianca did was insignificant because my wife and I were very happy that day and there were no major problems. But I still get angry when I think about how uncomfortable it must have been for the guests who were subjected to her presentation. Fortunately, they graciously accepted our apologies. Every time my wedding is mentioned, someone is sure to mention my crazy sister who is promoting her MLM. So incredibly embarrassing. Bianca and I haven't had a lot of contact since then. Yesterday, my mom called me, and after a bit of catching up, she told me my sister's business hasn't been doing very well, and she's been struggling to meet her monthly quotas, so now she's behind on rent and needs money. Bianca asked my mom for money, and she in turn asked me to help her. I said absolutely not. She embarrassed me at my wedding. She didn't even apologize, and I was absolutely sure she was going to use the money I gave her to get into another MLM now that this one was no longer working for her. My mom said that I'm cruel and rude. She said that she did not raise me to betray my family. I told her that she's just feeding my sister's fantasy world and making her believe that at some point she's going to be successful with her MLM. Am I the jerk? We're not on speaking terms right now. Not the jerk. Your sister's business isn't failing. She's just not able to afford to continue being a customer in the pyramid scheme. The sooner she hits rock bottom, the sooner she'll learn she was taken advantage of, and people helping her, slowing her fall with money, will only be brought down with her. Not the jerk. MLMs are legalized scams. I made more money trading during a stock market crash in a month than my sister who festered in one such scam for years. Let your mom know that your sister's MLM is just a money drainer. Not the jerk. She doesn't have a business. She has a spot at the bottom of the pyramid. What she did or didn't do at your wedding is actually irrelevant when it comes to whether or not you should give her money so she can sink it into this or another MLM so she can further fund the dreams of her uplines. If your mom wants to help her, she should help her get out. You're the jerk. I always laugh at how many of you bash MLMs. I was in a nutrition-based MLM for a few years back in college, and I made around $60K a year from it. How did I do this? By simply doing what I was trained to do, selling product and recruiting new members to join the company, who then had the same opportunity I had. It sure beat flipping burgers, but I had to put in the work. I was nowhere near the top of the pyramid, as you call it, but I still made good money and learned valuable skills in sales and networking that helped me land my current career. MLMs are what you make of them, and you get out what you put in. The problem with most of you here on Reddit is that you want to be handed everything for free without working for it. You are the same ones who get a degree in liberal arts, then get mad when nobody wants to hire you and you refuse to pay your college debt. Then the icing on the cake is you expecting your parents to pay for the ridiculous degrees you get. Reddit is like an instruction manual on how to end up sad, lonely, miserable, confused, low IQ, depressed, and very unsuccessful in life. Yowza, what's wrong with this guy? It's almost like he thinks most of the people on Reddit live in their mummy's basements and don't have any real-life experience. Oh, you're wrong for that one, Karen. Am I the jerk for using my daughter's college fund to keep our dream house? I, 50 female, lost my husband 4 years ago. I also have a 16-year-old daughter. My late husband left me everything and told me to trust his lawyer. My husband had worked for 20 years as a doctor and did some minor investing, so I inherited over 7 figures. A year later, I decided to list our home of 12 years and received an offer too good to refuse. With the inheritance, as well as the influx of cash from selling the house, I decided to move my daughter and I to Malibu because we always dreamed of a home next to the beach, but my husband was exceptionally tight-fisted and called homes there money pits. We found a beautiful home by the sea. I never personally handled anything regarding buying a home before, so I did not anticipate all of the extra costs beyond the sticker price. But my daughter was so excited, so I decided to go for it. My late husband's lawyer was furious at my decision, so I decided to stop taking his calls. I ended up signing with a money manager who said we'd be passively earning 90% of what surgeons earned per year. But the money manager ended up tanking a lot of our investments. I took the dwindling money out and made my own investments, which made it worse. And long story short, because of all of that, I only have around $35,000 available to me now, not to mention our debts. With the amount available to me, I'm looking at only being able to pay 1 month of a mortgage/upkeep, and then I'm basically out of my luck until my business gets clients. However, the place where we do have a significant amount of money is the fund my husband started for our daughter. With the money there, I could prevent our credit cards from being shut down and not have to worry about the mortgage for many more months. So I ended up liquidating my daughter's college fund. I told her about it today, and she was furious and said she can't believe all of her dad's work is gone. She also said she won't be supporting me for retirement. Am I the jerk for trying to fix my mistakes and trying to keep our house? You're the jerk. You decided not to listen to the lawyer, you decided to move to an extremely expensive place, and you decided to trust somebody's shady advice. Now you're taking away from your daughter's chances of being able to go to college loan-free. That money is not yours. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're the jerk. You made an extremely poor financial decision and disregarded those around you who were offering you more sound financial advice. Having a home near the beach doesn't mean you need to move to Malibu, but I digress. You are absolutely the jerk here. You robbed your daughter of a chance to start her life off comfortably and took money that was never intended for you. Sell this godforsaken money pit of a home, get somewhere you can actually afford, and take a class in personal finance management. You're the jerk and also fabulously incompetent with money. You will not keep the dream house. You lack ability to earn enough money or to manage what you have. Raiding her college fund will only delay the inevitable. Sell the beachfront house and move somewhere that you can afford. Also, call the lawyer back, tell them that you were wrong and made bad choices. Now you learned and are asking for his advice on how to fix things. Brother lied to pregnant wife about owning my house. So I, 27 male, inherited my childhood 3-bedroom home after my mother passed 5 years ago, along with a good chunk of cash. I live in that home right now. Not to brag, but it's a beautiful home. Now I have a half-brother who we will call Blake, 26 male. We share the same father. He's also passed on. Blake is a deadbeat. He can't keep a job, jumps from relationship to relationship, makes excuses and blames everyone else for all of his problems. And he thinks the world owes him everything. Just not really a good guy. But with my parents gone, he's the only family I have left, so I try to work around it. He's been living with me for a year and a half now after getting kicked out of his own apartment for not paying rent. He went and got his newest girlfriend, who's 24, knocked up and decided that meant they needed to get married right away. They got married at our local courthouse. Now I agreed to have her move in too. She's carrying my niece or nephew after all. It's been 3 months since they got married and she moved in. And she's been rude, demanding, and just outright the worst the whole time. Originally, I chalked it up to being pregnant. But then, one day she comes up to me and tells me that I have to move out. I'm confused and ask what she's talking about. She goes on about how with the baby coming, it's time I leave as they need the space. I tell her she has no right to kick me out of my own house. She comments that since she married my brother, the house was part hers now too, and it's weird to have your husband's brother living with you and your kid. I realized that she thought my brother owned at least part of the house. I explained that she and my brother were in fact living with me, not the other way around, letting her know I fully own it and my brother has no right to it, and neither does she. She goes quiet and runs off. When my brother comes home, they get into a huge fight and she leaves to go to her mother's. My brother's mad at me for telling her the truth. Honestly, up until this point, I thought she knew. Now my brother claims he didn't tell her he owns it. She knew the house was inherited, and since we were brothers, she assumed he owned half and he just never corrected her. My brother is now demanding I give them the house because they need it more with the baby coming. He thinks the least I can do for ruining his relationship with his wife. I told him that wasn't happening and informed him neither of them were welcome in my home. He called me a bunch of names and left. I believe he's staying with a cousin or a friend, I'm not sure. P.S. Some people were worried about them claiming squatters' rights or tenant rights. We're not from America. Squatters' rights is not a thing here. He also is not a tenant as he's never paid rent, so there's no tenant rights either. Also, I have cameras and my locks are being changed today. I'm also having my boyfriend, who is a cop, staying with me for a while. That's insane. Seems like your brother wants to take the house from you. In cases like this, you could never be too safe from family. You offered your home, you allowed them to move in without rent, and now they're trying to take your childhood home. Be safe, OP. Family disputes like these don't always end well. Am I the jerk for not sending my daughter to a different school district? I have 3 kids, Michelle, who's 7, Juliet, who's 6, and Leo, who's 2. Michelle and Juliet are in kindergarten and 1st grade at our local public school. Juliet, however, is very gifted. She came into kindergarten reading chapter books and was doing math at a 2nd grade level. She's obviously doing great academically, but struggles socially at her school for a couple reasons. Firstly, she doesn't understand that other people's brains don't work like hers and tends to get frustrated when people take a bit longer to figure things out. Second, she's just a huge bookworm and would rather spend recess reading instead of playing with the other kids. Then she gets upset that she can't talk about her books with them. I was recently called into a meeting about Juliet with her teacher, the principal of her school, and the superintendent. They basically said that they don't have the resources to support Juliet in her school or any schools in the district, but there is a school 2 towns over specifically for gifted students from 1st to 10th grade. Then for 11th and 12th grade, they have a building at a community college, and she would be taking college courses for high school and college credit. She would have to test into the school, but her school will provide the testing. The school sounds great for her, but it's close to 30 minutes away from her current school. It starts and ends 45 minutes later than her current school, so I'd still be able to get her and Michelle to school on time, but it would eat up the last 2 extra hours of my day, and I don't have that kind of time for school drop-off and pickup. Nor do I have the patience to deal with a 2-year-old in the car for 2 hours per day. My husband works in the opposite direction and wouldn't be able to drop her off. We could ask my father-in-law. He sometimes drives the kids around for me, but I don't want him to have to drop off and pick up 2 hours per day. My husband does not agree with me at all. He thinks I should be willing to make the drive for her and insists that I have the time because I'm a stay-at-home mom. I brought up the issue of having Leo spending that much time in the car, but he says that I could just have his parents babysit. I still don't think it's worth the 2 hours per day that I'd have to put in to take her to this school, so I went through with enrolling her in our local public school for next year, and my husband is furious with me for ignoring her social and academic needs. Am I the jerk for not enrolling her in the gifted school because it would take too much time to get her to and from school? You're the jerk for just saying no outright when you do have options to make this work. You could at least have asked the in-laws if they'd be willing to help out, perhaps with a combo of rides and babysitting, and you went ahead and enrolled her in a different school against your husband's wishes. That's messed up. It sounds like you didn't even ask her at all either. This is her education that we're talking about. She might be pretty young, but the entire point is that she is advanced and not being challenged where she is. You're taking away the opportunity for her to actually learn and move forward in an environment that will challenge her. And instead, you want to leave her in one that's most likely going to be boring and annoying, one where she doesn't seem to fit in with her peers either. And all because you don't want to drive a little more? Did you look into any type of transportation? Ask about school buses for her or the other kids. See what other parents might be able to help out, or the in-laws you decided you didn't want to inconvenience without even speaking to. You're the jerk. At least pretend to try before you outright shut down this opportunity. Exactly. My mother ended up arranging for me to carpool with other kids and even teachers who live nearby because we didn't have a car and the school was an hour away. OP isn't trying at all and doesn't care that her kid is going to be so bored she's going to stop paying attention entirely and end up falling behind as a result. So instead of a prodigy, she's going to end up with an angry and disillusioned dropout. You're the jerk. Sorry, but we sacrifice for our kids first and foremost. The "I don't have the patience" comment pushed it over the edge. So the people at your local school are telling you that they cannot support your daughter there, and you're saying, okay, well, too bad, I can't be bothered to drive her elsewhere? Being gifted is like having special needs. It's not about her being better than the other kids. It's about needing specialized teaching to thrive at school. Put a gifted kid into a normal class and they will be bullied and turn into an underachiever. I agree with your husband. You're the jerk. Not the jerk. I'm so surprised by all of these you're the jerks. I'm wondering how many of them have kids and have to run a household. 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month in a car while maintaining a house? No thanks. It's hard being a mom. That's just going to up her stress level because she'll feel behind on everything. Moms need to make the choices of what is best for the family as a whole, including herself. She said her daughter was having problems socializing. Spending the time taking the daughter to social activities would be a better use of the time. A kid's mental health is just as important as their education. She should consider working on her building strong social skills. No jerks here. You all want what's best for your kids. But your husband doesn't seem to understand the extra labor that entails, especially with a kid. That's a lot of extra time in driving. I feel like some people think that being a stay-at-home mom is a super relaxing job that's flexible and easily changed, but it's not. It's real work and requires energy and labor. If it doesn't work for what you can handle during the day, I think your husband should understand that. Or tell him he's responsible for her getting to and from school as far as finding arrangements to get her there if it's possible. If not, then maybe now isn't the time to do it. Hope you guys can come to an agreement. Best of luck to your family. My wife took down a special anniversary painting I bought her so she could display her sister's basic drawing. My wife of 5 years is a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes. She's been since she was a teenager. She's 43 now. She and I have had a lot of issues in the past because she, in the past before marriage while we were dating, would always prioritize her family, sisters and parents instead of our relationship. Fast forward, a lot of counseling, time, and miles, and here we are. For our anniversary, I bought her a special one-of-a-kind original painting. It's 1-for-1 that we keep hung in our bedroom. It's special because it's symbolic of each of us waiting for the time and place that we found each other. We found each other later in life, 36 and 31. Fast forward to tonight. I walk upstairs and I see that our painting is laying on one of our dressers and hung in its place is one of her sister's paintings. She apparently painted this piece recently so that it could hang in the bedroom of our 10-month-old. A little bit of context. We have 2 kids, a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. My wife had a previous Calvin and Hobbes painting that her sister did, and it hangs in our 2.5-year-old's room, despite me voicing my disapproval. After confronting my wife, she said that she wanted to treat the boys the same, so her sister painted another pic for our youngest son. Am I the jerk for being mad that she took down our painting to display her sister's? My wife claims that she just wanted to remember her young years for a night, and that she was planning on putting the drawing in our son's room in the morning and putting our painting back up on the wall. I'm furious and told her that again, she's picking her family over me. Out of all of the possible places to hang this piece, she took down a special sentimental piece. What on earth? Am I overreacting? Edit. We're both female. Edit 2. Adding this information based on some feedback in the comments section. Someone asked me why I didn't get along with her family or something along those lines. This is what I responded. She has so many other paintings her sister has made for her or gifted her scattered throughout the house, including our bedroom. It was just this particular location that was kind of our special altar, and it felt special to me too, because of the verbal feedback she had given in the past. You're the jerk. She was switching around the wall decor, and you're projecting the issues you have with her family onto this. You're the jerk. She wanted to hang it for one night. You are completely overreacting. It doesn't make your painting less special. She's allowed to have sentimental attachment to multiple things. You're the jerk. If it's not about you, OP, then it's automatically not okay. This needs to be cross-posted into a narcissist group. You're mad that her sister did custom paintings for your kids? That just automatically means your wife prioritizes her sister over you? Oof. And if this is just what you wrote from your view, I can only imagine what your wife would actually write. It's just the ocean salt? Okay. This was a long time ago when the beaches in Mexico were still decent and not ruined by hotels. Now, there were 2 beaches my family frequented as my grandmother lived in town. We usually went to the further beach as it turned into basically a giant clam farm when the tide went down. My 50 billion cousins and I would get buckets full, then the grown-ups would cook them the next day. This was my favorite part as I was never fond of the ocean. Thanks, Jaws. One year, in my mother's infinite wisdom, we went to the closer beach because they just didn't feel like driving to the good beach. I, being a typical 14-year-old, started started whining to my mom the minute I saw the first of what would be many broken bottles. I whined about the seaweed on the shore that was stinky and right next to our setup. I tried to play in the sand, but people kept throwing things, in one case, an entire dog, into my castles. Ultimately, I decided to get into the water where my mom had gone, which is where I made my mistake. After only a few minutes, I began to feel something that hurt on my arm. I saw a bunch of small fish around me, so I dismissed it as the fish swimming by me. I went over close to where my mom was and felt it again, but now it kinda hurt for a bit. I swished my arms around and it stopped, but I didn't see anything besides the tiny fish. I told my mom, "I think something's biting me." My mom says, "Oh, that's just the salt. You're fine. That's why I keep telling you to put lotion on. Your skin is so dry." "I've never been hurt by salt before, Mom." "Then just ignore it. There's nothing biting you. I know you don't like this beach, but don't ruin it. We're just trying to enjoy the day and no one else is complaining about bites." I go into petty mode and just stare at her as I remain perfectly still. It didn't take long until I felt those bites again, but now I was going to ignore it. So I just stood there for several minutes, just staring at her until the pain turned into burning and the burning turned into agony. Did I panic? Nope. I ever so slowly got closer to my mom until she got startled at how close I was. Then, like frozen molasses in January, I lifted my arm up and said, "Hey, I caught some salt." There on my arm was a bunch of what looked like brown and white striped string, and it was burning the shape of its body into my swelling arm right in front of our eyes. A bunch of baby sea nettles, jellyfish, were stinging me and were pretty much invisible until they were out of the water. My mom swatted my arm and shouted for everyone to get out of the water. It wasn't a stampede of cousins or anything, but everyone looked at me to see what had happened. We spent the next hour wasting our popsicles on my arm as the burning went on for quite some time. Of course, me being me, I had to ask my mom if there was salt in the popsicles. It didn't stop them from going to that beach, but the next time they went, it was the season for the moon jellyfish, which wash up on the shore and completely cover the beach, making it really dangerous for kids and dogs to run around on. The time after that, there were so many people that my cousin almost stepped on a small pile of broken bottles. I never went back. Neighbor trespasses on my property and threatens to post a story about me on Reddit. I'm posting this because I was told I'd end up on Reddit, and my kids told me this is likely what the person meant. So I live in an area that's seeing a lot of new builds. My husband and I have the last large lot on our street, lived here for 20 plus years. Probably 800 people lived here when we bought our house. Now it's over 10,000 people. It's about 1.5 acres. We installed a big play area a few years ago for our nieces, nephews, and eventual grandkids. It's on the opposite side of our lot, pretty far away from the house. There's a path that goes from our second driveway. It's landscaped, and we purchased it from a contractor who was replacing some other park, so I can see how people mistake it as a town park. This happens often that people stop to play, and I usually don't care. But we don't encourage it, as we have 2 giant dogs who will bark at strangers who come in the yard. I put up some blatant signs that say private property and beware of dog. Right now it's still cold here. It's an early Friday morning, and I open the door to let the dogs out. They stay in the yard and ignore anything outside the yard. The dogs start barking, I hear yelling. I run outside. There's a couple and their kid playing on the playground. I call the dogs back and put them in the house. I go over to apologize and let them know it's not a public park. As soon as I get within earshot, the mom starts yelling, "What is wrong with you? We're calling animal control on you. Who lets their dogs just run around a park? Get a fence." I hate confrontation, so I get a bit shaky. I tell her it's not a park, it's my yard. She says, "Get out of here. Get away from us." I point to the signs and tell her again that it's not a park, it's our yard, and they need to leave. She starts going off about how it's illegal to leave a play area open. It isn't. And it's illegal to let your dogs off leash in this neighborhood. It isn't. There are almost no bylaws here yet. I tell them again to just leave and that they weren't allowed to be on our property. My dogs are in the big window barking, and her husband is screaming that I should train my dogs before they hurt someone. They're bred to guard and detain intruders. Historically, we don't train them as guard dogs. This upset me more than anything because I'm an irrational animal lover. I called the police. When they saw I was on the phone with the cops, they started shouting about me being a Karen and started getting in their car. Their poor kid was crying, and the woman said, "Watch what happens when you end up on Reddit and we tell people where you live. So here you go, Reddit. My kids checked and didn't find anything about it here, so I'll post it first, and I hope she does post something. I'm sorry my dog scared them, but the screaming and threatening was so over the top and honestly deranged. My kids want me to end this by asking if I'm the jerk because I'm old and I want people to get off my lawn. Everyone is saying install a fence, but that would cost $15,000. I've just contacted a company about getting a gate for our second driveway. Also, where we live, you can't sue someone if they're trespassing on your private property. Suing people isn't something people can easily do here, and usually it's not for any big settlement. Before you comment about attractive nuisance law, it doesn't exist here. I don't want to say where I am, but it isn't the US or anywhere close. Not the jerk. If it's your property, it's your property. That woman was obnoxious, and it's her fault that her kid was crying. I would install a privacy fence and lock it. OP. I would love to install a fence, but it would cost upwards of $15,000. I think after this, we'll at least get a gate for the second driveway. It doesn't have to be a pretty fence. You could do the equivalent of a deer fence for a couple of hundred. A bunch of metal fencing poles you simply hammer into the ground, and a roll of wire garden or deer fencing you unroll and tie to the metal poles. Then you can put signs on the fencing. Private property, not a public park. Am I the jerk for throwing out my husband's dinner after he went to eat at his mom's house? My mother-in-law calls every night to ask what we're having for dinner. Then she brags about what she's cooking to make me look bad, especially if we're getting takeout. I used to care, but not anymore. But my husband would ask me to make dinner only for him to go eat the dinner his mom makes at her home, which is 10 minutes away, and using the "that's my favorite meal" excuse. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having, but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him that she cooked X meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up, getting ready to leave. He told me, no offense, but this meal that his mom cooked was even more of a favorite one than the one I cooked, and grabbed his keys and he left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said, what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. ETA, to make one thing clear, and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make, and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. Not the jerk. Your husband can either commit to eating at home with you, tell you well before dinner that he's eating with his mom, or he can make his own meals. Until he starts regularly making a choice to be home or go with enough time for you to plan and prep your cooking, cook enough for only you. He's on his own. ETA. I wasn't going to say because I feel it's obvious, but I can't help myself. This is much larger of an issue than dinner time. There's a profound lack of respect in your relationship. Husband needs to snip the apron strings at the very least, but really needs to spend some serious time thinking about what a marriage and partnership actually means. Not the jerk, stop cooking for him. Tell him how you felt when you made the effort to prepare a nice meal and he decided to eat at mom's. If he continues to do it, you won't cool. I also suggest a compromise. Pick 2 nights a week that he eats with his mom. If she calls on other nights at the last minute, he can gracefully decline. Sorry, my wife has dinner taken care of. I'll see you on Thursday. If she particularly wants to have him there for a certain holiday or anniversary, she should ask well before that day arrives. You should consider asking her doctor to evaluate her for dementia because her behavior is weird. My aunt passed of Alzheimer's last week, but she did something similar. She would call and lie to get attention. I haven't seen anyone all day. There's no food in the house. None of this was true. She lived in a mobile home next to her daughter. Her 16-year-old grandkid stayed over every night in case she needed assistance at night. The family brought her food regularly. She had Meals on Wheels for lunch, and her daughter made breakfast every morning and sent dinner. She was surrounded by people who cared about her, but if she was left alone for 10 minutes, she whipped out her phone and started making these crisis calls. By the time we arrived, she forgot she had called. Your mother-in-law should be evaluated for a neurological or mental illness. Her behavior may not be able to be changed, but there are treatments available. Karen makes a fuss over my plane seat, then insists that I pay for her to move. So this happened back in January of 2018, so my memory may be a bit fuzzy. So I'm a 23-year-old man who usually visits my parents and siblings for Christmas and New Year's because that's the only time I can see them. So I'm in the airport waiting to board my flight as I see a woman getting angry because her kids were tired and wanted to get on the plane. I think nothing of it and hope she's not sat near me. No, she was at my gate. As I was approaching my seat, an aisle seat in business class, because I knew it would be smarter than asking people to stand up so I can get to the bathroom. When I get to my seat, I see one mother and two kids, one in my seat. I tell the mother that's my seat. She's visibly upset at that statement and snaps back. No, it's not, jerk. Me, not wanting to have a fight on the plane, I grab the attention of the flight attendant and I show her my boarding pass, so the flight attendant asks her to move from my seat politely. And being asked to move set off the Karen in a raised voice. This is my seat. I paid for it, so buzz off. The flight attendant, still being polite, asks to see the boarding passes to check the seats. The entitled mother pulls two out for the seats next to mine. The flight attendant, slightly less kind, says, Ma'am, these are only 2 boarding passes. Where's the third one? The mother, thinking she's smart, says, I must have dropped the third one, so I can't give it to you. So this causes me to butt into the conversation and say that I have the boarding pass for that seat because it's my seat. You should have seen the look on her face, because she then shouts out, Give me my boarding pass, you jerk! I'm confused why she's so delusional at this point, because it's obviously my ticket since I bought it. The next part was back and forth arguing, which I can barely remember, but from what I do remember, it was the flight attendant saying that I clearly paid for this seat as it had my name on the boarding pass, and her arguing for a few more minutes before stopping grinning, and she said, Well, if you want me to move so bad, how about you pay to upgrade me and my kids to first class? I responded by saying, Miss, I only have a business class seat because I do a trip like this once a year, so I tend to be comfortable during a flight and I don't have the funds for 3 first-class tickets. The flight attendant then says to the Karen, Either you or one of your kids will have to move, or else we will have to remove you from the flight. Then, without holding back, she screeches, If I leave, he's going to hurt them. Me and the flight attendant are physically taken aback by hearing this. After that, I stopped trying to be nice and responded, Get out of my seat and never make those claims again, you self-centered jerk. The flight attendant tries to calm me down and calls for security. In the end, the Karen and her kids were escorted off the plane and I got a row to myself. Support our channel by joining as a member today and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.